Welcome back to Who Are We, the space where we really try to explore those fascinating, sometimes tricky currents of consciousness, psychology, mysticism, mythology, science, and symbolism.
And today, we're venturing into a territory that's, well, it's been whispered about for centuries, hasn't it?
It really has. Often misunderstood, I think, but it's so deeply woven into human history, into our inner worlds, too. We're talking about the occult.
hmm And for anyone maybe less familiar, the word occult itself comes from the Latin occultus, which just means hidden.
Right.
So think of it as this huge range of beliefs, practices, knowledge, really,
Yeah.
that sits outside the usual boundaries of mainstream religion or, conventional science.
It's like searching for that knowledge of the hidden, isn't it? Insights into spiritual stuff or maybe subtle laws of nature that aren't immediately obvious.
Exactly. Things that aren't always publicly taught or easily seen.
And we've gathered quite a range of sources to help us navigate this. Our aim today really is to get to the heart of what the occult is about
Yeah, look at its history, explore the different traditions.
and maybe figure out what it tells us about ourselves, about the universe. We want to move past the usual cliches, the sensationalism.
Definitely. And find the maybe surprising facts or the deeper insights hidden within these practices.
So if that kind of exploration sparks your curiosity, that, desire to understand the deeper currents shaping things.
Then please do think about liking and subscribing. It genuinely helps us keep these deep dives going.
It really does. Okay, let's start unpacking this hidden world.
Where do we begin? Defining the term itself, maybe.
Good idea. Because as you said, occult just means hidden, secret, arcane. It's crucial to get this up front.
Hmm.
It doesn't automatically mean evil or satanic.
No, that's a common misconception, a really persistent one. We'll definitely circle back to that later.
But the idea of occultism as a specific movement, that really kicked off in the 19th century in Europe, right?
Yeah, figures like Helena Blavatsky were key in bringing the term into wider use in English, around, say, 1875.
But the roots go way, way back. We're talking about the traditional occult sciences, things like astrology, alchemy, natural magic.
Exactly. These weren't always seen as fringe. For centuries, they were considered legitimate areas of study, ways of understanding the hidden workings of the cosmos.
And it's not just a Western thing either. Almost every culture seems to have its own form of this hidden or mystical wisdom.
hmm You've got the ancient Egyptian and Greek mystery schools, initiation rites.
The Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism, the Tantras in India.
It really does suggest a kind of universal human impulse, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This search for deeper knowledge.
And even within the big religions, you find these esoteric, these inner paths.
Like Sufism in Islam, or Kabbalah, again, in Judaism, Gnostic groups in early Christianity.
Which leads some to think about a kind of underlying perennial wisdom, a prisca theologia.
Right, this idea of an ancient core truth passed down through figures like Hermes Trismegistus, maybe influencing Plato, maybe even Jesus. It's a fascinating, if speculative, idea of a shared root.
So today we'll try to cover quite a bit. Core concepts, the major traditions, alchemy, astrology, magic, tarot, Hermeticism, Gnosticism, Thelema,
We'll touch on historical moments, psychological angles, especially Jung.
spiritual significance, connections to myth, pop culture, and definitely tackle those misunderstandings.
Okay, so core concepts. First up has to be that idea of hidden knowledge.
Yes, truths not easily seen or officially taught. Esoteric versus exoteric, right? The inner versus the outer teaching.
And this often goes hand in hand with what you might call an enchanted worldview,
Meaning,
meaning the universe isn't just dead matter, it's alive, filled with spiritual forces, correspondences, symbolism.
a very different feel from a purely materialistic view or even some literal religious takes.
Absolutely. Which brings us to another key concept, correspondence. The microcosm and the macrocosm.
Ah, as above, so below. The Hermetic idea.
Exactly. The human being reflects the universe, and the universe reflects the human. Understanding one helps understand the other. It's central to Hermeticism, astrology, magic.
It links everything together.
And then there's the idea of interconnected planes of reality.
Beyond the physical, like the astral plane, mental, spiritual.
Yeah, different layers of existence, with energies or maybe even entities moving between them. Ritual magic often aims to interact with the astral, for instance.
While astrology looks at how celestial movements on one plane influence Earth, makes sense.
And central to expressing all this is symbolism and archetypes.
Because the knowledge is often abstract, right? So you need symbols, myths, allegories.
Think of alchemical drawings, or the tarot cards, the Fool, the Empress. these powerful images.
And this is where Carl Jung comes in so strongly.
Yes. He saw these recurring symbols and myths as expressions of archetypes from the collective unconscious.
Universal patterns deep within the human psyche, shared by everyone.
So these occult symbols resonate because they tap into something fundamental inside us.
It's not just about knowing things, though, is it? There's also personal transformation.
Hugely important. Gaining this hidden knowledge is meant to change the seeker.
Like the alchemists turning lead into gold, but really about purifying the soul.
That's a very common interpretation, yes. Many occult paths are initiatory journeys, leading to inner change, enlightenment, gnosis, direct knowing.
Okay, so let's trace the history a bit, focusing on the West. It starts way back in the ancient and classical era.
Oh yeah, 3000 BCE to 500 CE, roughly. Mesopotamian astrology, Egyptian magic, and religion.
Greek Hermeticism, there's Hermes Trismegistus again, as above, so below. Neoplatonism.
The mystery religions like the Eleusinian mysteries, Orphic traditions, and those early Gnostic groups seeking salvation through secret knowledge.
Then the medieval period, say 500 to 1500 CE. What happens then? Things go underground.
Somewhat in Europe, but crucially, Islamic scholars preserved and developed a lot of this knowledge. Alchemy and astrology flourished in the Islamic world.
Ah, so they were the custodians in a way.
In many ways, yes. In Europe, astrology and things like geomancy were still practiced, grimoires circulated quietly, and Jewish Kabbalah really developed.
Then boom, the Renaissance, 15th to 17th centuries. Things open up again.
Massively. A huge resurgence of interest in Hermetic texts. The Corpus Hermeticum is rediscovered.
This idea of the Prisca Theologia, the ancient wisdom, gains traction.
We see Christian Kabbalah, natural magic becoming more prominent figures, like Marsilio Ficino exploring astral magic. Alchemy thrives with people like Paracelsus.
The rise of the Magus' figure, like Agrippa writing his occult philosophy, and early secret societies like the Rosicrucians appear.
And it's important, as you said, this wasn't totally separate from early science. Many thinkers had a foot in both worlds.
Okay, moving into the Enlightenment and early modern period, 17th, 18th centuries.
Yeah.
More skepticism.
Generally, yes. The scientific revolution shifts the focus. We also see the tragedy of the witch trials fading.
But things still simmer beneath the surface.
Definitely. Freemasonry emerges using esoteric symbols. People still privately studied alchemy, and towards the end you get figures like Corticejebelin linking tarot to ancient Egypt, Ataya creating divinatory tarot decks, Mesmer and his animal magnetism,
And the Illuminati adding to the mystique of secret societies.
which all sets the stage for that big occult revival in the 19th century.
A huge resurgence. Spiritualism becomes incredibly popular.
Eliphas Levi reinterprets magic, links tarot and Kabbalah more formally. Blavatsky founds the Theosophical Society, blending East and West.
And those ritual magic lodges form, like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn.
Hugely influential, training people like Yeats and Aleister Crowley in Kabbalah, tarot, ceremonial magic, astral travel, a whole system.
Which brings us to the 20th century and up to now. Crowley breaks away, founds Thelema.
With his famous law, do what thou wilt, which is often misunderstood, but we'll get to that.
Psychology intersects, especially Jung looking at alchemy and tarot symbolically.
Wicca and neo-paganism rise after WWII. The 50s and 70s counterculture embraces New Age and occult ideas.
Satanism becomes more formalized with LaVey. Chaos magic emerges later.
And the internet age brings another wave, making information widespread. Academic study starts taking it seriously, and of course its massive influence on pop culture.
And we shouldn't forget the Eastern traditions, Tantra, Taoist alchemy, Sufism interacting with and influencing Western occultism too.
It's a vast and tangled history.
Right. Okay, so let's maybe zoom in on some of those key traditions and practices. Alchemy, for instance.
Ah, yes. More than just trying to make literal gold. It was a proto-science, but also a mystical art.
Aiming for the transmutation of metals, yes, but also the elixir of life, the philosopher's stone, the great work, the magnum opus.
And incredibly rich in symbolism. Dragons, phoenixes, the Ouroboros snake eating its tail, often representing stages of spiritual transformation.
This is where Jung saw the map of individuation, right? Transforming inner lead into gold.
Precisely. The stages of the work, nigredo, blackening, albedo, whitening,
Yeah.
rubedo, reddening. He saw the mirroring psychological processes. It's deeply tied to Hermeticism.
Still relevant today, psychologically speaking, and in some New Age contexts. Okay, how about astrology?
Ancient origins, Mesopotamia. The idea that celestial movements influence life on Earth, as above, so below, again.
Developed in the Hellenistic era with the zodiac, horoscopes, Adopted in India as Vedic astrology, eventually reintroduced to Europe.
Each planet, each sign, seen as having archetypal qualities. Natal charts, mapping personality, life themes.
Lost its academic standing with the rise of science, but public fascination never really went away.
No, and modern psychological astrology focuses more on archetypes and potentials rather than strict prediction. It taps into ideas of synchronicity, symbolic meaning.
Then there's ritual magic or ceremonial magic.
This involves using specific, often elaborate rituals, symbols, actions to, well, exert one's will or cause change, often for spiritual or psychological effects.
Traces back to things like the old Solomonic grimoires, but shifted towards natural magic in the Renaissance with figures like John Dee.
Then really systematized by groups like the Golden Dawn, integrating Kabbalah, tarot, even Enochian magic derived from Dee's work.
Crowley famously spelled it magic with a K to distinguish it from stage magic, defining it as the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will.
Right. Rituals often involve creating a sacred space, using consecrated tools, specific invocations or evocations, maybe sigils, following a structure like banishing, raising energy, directing it, closing down.
There's often talk of high versus low magic.
Yeah, a sometimes fuzzy distinction. High magic typically aimed at spiritual growth, contacting higher intelligences. Low magic more focused on practical, earthly results, but it's not always clear-cut. Requires a lot of study of correspondences, which planets rule which herbs, colors, times, etc.
Next up, the tarot. So iconic.
Indeed, started as a playing card game in 15th century Italy. 78 cards. 22 major arcana, the big archetypal figures, and 56 minor arcana in 4 suits.
But its mystical interpretation came later.
Much later, late 18th century, people like Court de Gebelin and Etaya started seeing deeper meanings, creating decks specifically for divination.
Then Levy integrated it into the broader occult framework, connecting it to Kabbalah.
And the modern forms we know best, like the Rider-Waite-Smith deck or Crowley's Thoth Tarot, are dense with layered symbolism.
Used for divination, obviously, but also meditation, psychological exploration, pathworking on the Kabbalistic tree of life.
Jung saw the major arcana as depicting the archetypal journey of the soul. He felt divination worked through synchronicity, meaningful coincidence, connecting the cards drawn to the querent's inner state.
It's quite an accessible entry point for many people, isn't it? Teaches symbolic thinking.
Definitely. Now, Hermeticism. We've mentioned Hermes Trismegistus.
Based on writings attributed to him, like the Corpus Hermeticum and the famous Emerald Tablet.
Key ideas include a form of monotheism or panentheism, that core principle of correspondence, as above, so below, the power of mind as creator, and the pursuit of gnosis, direct intuitive knowledge of the divine.
Spiritual rebirth is a big theme, and it tends to be world-affirming, seeing spirit and matter as integrated.
Right. It claims to be part of that Prisca Theologia, that perennial philosophy, hugely influential on alchemy, magic, secret societies. Modern summaries like the Kabbalion try to capture its principles. Practice involves study, contemplation, meditation. Aiming for the enlightened mage, maybe a co-creator with the divine.
Contrasting that maybe with Gnosticism.
A bit, yes. Gnosticism was really a collection of diverse religious movements in the early Christian era, also emphasizing gnosis, secret knowledge, for salvation.
But with a more radical cosmology.
Generally, yes. A core idea was that the material world is flawed, maybe even created by a lesser ignorant deity, the demiurge. The true God is transcendent, beyond this world.
And humans have a divine spark trapped within matter.
Exactly, needing awakening through gnosis. Christ was often seen as a divine messenger bringing this knowledge. So often a more world-rejecting or pessimistic view of material existence compared to Hermeticism.
The Nag Hammadi library discovery shed a lot of light on their actual texts.
It did. Gnosticism influenced later movements like the Cathars, and Jung found its ideas resonated with his concept of the shadow. There are even modern revival attempts. It constantly brings up that theme of hidden truth versus false appearances.
Okay, and then there's Thelema, founded by Crowley.
Based on the Book of the Law, which he claimed was dictated to him in 1904, the central law, as we mentioned, is, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law."
Which sounds like hedonism, but isn't meant that way.
No, not at all. The emphasis is on discovering and fulfilling one's true will, your unique, authentic purpose or path in life, which requires self-knowledge and discipline, not just doing whatever you feel like.
It also includes love is the law, love under will, respecting others' right to follow their own true will.
Correct. It has its own pantheon, drawing on Egyptian figures like Nuit, Hadid, Rahor Khut, but often interpreted symbolically or archetypally. It integrates ceremonial magic, Kabbalah, yoga.
There are organizations like the Ayer and Ordo Templi Orientis, OTO, associated with it.
Yes. The ethical stance is a kind of esoteric libertarianism. Every man and every woman is a star. Finding that true will is seen as the great work. It's definitely not about devil worship, despite Crowley's provocative image. It's about spiritual self-determination.
And there are so many other traditions, too. We can only touch on them. Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, with its tree of life model being adapted into Hermetic Kabbalah.
Witchcraft and folk magic, local traditions leading into modern Wicca and neo-paganism, often nature-focused.
Various divination systems like numerology, palmistry, geomancy, the I Ching, scrying.
Neo-paganism more broadly, trying to revive ancient polytheistic paths. And the influence of Eastern esoteric practices like Tantra, certain forms of yoga, Taoist alchemy, Sufism, often sharing goals of transforming consciousness.
It's an incredibly rich and diverse landscape.
It really is, which maybe leads us nicely into the psychological perspective, particularly Jung's.
Yes, Carl Jung had a lifelong fascination with occult phenomena, didn't he?
He did. He saw immense psychological value in these traditions, even if he didn't always take them literally. His ideas about the collective unconscious and archetypes are key here.
That shared deep level of the psyche, filled with these universal patterns, the mother, the hero, the shadow, the self.
Exactly. And he saw these archetypes vividly expressed in myths, dreams, religious experiences, and in occult symbolism.
Like the tarot's major arcana depicting the archetypal journey.
Precisely. And he used the concept of synchronicity, that a causal connecting principle, meaningful coincidence, to help understand how things like divination might work, reflecting an inner state rather than causing an outer event.
His work on alchemy and individuation is particularly famous.
Yes, he spent years studying alchemical texts, seeing them not as failed chemistry, but as symbolic representations of the individuation process, the journey toward psychological wholeness.
Turning the inner lead of the undeveloped personality into the gold of the integrated self.
The alchemical marriage of opposites he saw as symbolizing the integration of conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche. The great work was achieving the self, a unified personality.
And shadow work is crucial to this in Jungian thought.
Absolutely. The shadow represents the unconscious, denied, or repressed parts of ourselves. Integrating the shadow, acknowledging and working with those darker aspects is essential for wholeness.
And occult practices often involve confronting the shadow, don't they? Initiations, symbolic descents.
They certainly can. Jung felt that some mainstream Western religious views, by emphasizing an all-good God, tended to push the darker aspects into the shadow, whereas many esoteric traditions actively engage with darkness and duality to achieve balance. He even spoke of Dionysus as the necessary dark brother to Christ in the psyche.
He framed this whole process of individuation as a kind of heroic quest.
Yes, the journey of self-discovery and integration. The symbols Jung associated with the achieved self, the divine child, the wise old figure, mandalas, the world tree, often mirror symbols found in occult traditions. It's about bringing inner chaos into order, reconciling opposites.
So Jung provided a really valuable bridge, didn't he? Allowing us to appreciate occult symbolism and practices psychologically.
Definitely. You could see occult practices as enacted metaphors for inner shifts. Rituals might clear negative thought patterns psychologically. Working with deities could be seen as cultivating specific archetypal energies within oneself.
He famously said something like, the gods have become diseases, meaning when archetypes aren't consciously related to, they manifest as psychological problems.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
His legacy is huge in transpersonal and depth psychology. His perspective allows people to engage with these traditions symbolically, finding meaning and therapeutic value, even without literal belief in magic or spirits. Synchronicity offers a non-causal way to think about divination.
It's a really powerful lens. Now, shifting gears slightly, what about the occult in popular culture? Its influence seems massive.
Oh, it's everywhere. Movies, music, books, games, fashion. It spreads ideas, often distorted, admittedly, but it also sparks genuine interest.
In literature, you've got writers like Yeats, who was deeply involved, Lovecraft, whose fictional Necronomicon actually inspired some real occultists, Alan Moore using Kabbalah and tarot in comics like Promethea. Fantasy genres are steeped in it.
Film and TV, too. Think Rosemary's Baby, The Ninth Gate, Doctor Strange, shows like Sabrina or American Horror Story. Often sensationalized, but it makes the concepts familiar. Even The Matrix has strong Gnostic themes.
Music is full of it. The Beatles putting Crowley on the Sweet Pepper cover, Led Zeppelin's interest, heavy metal's use of symbols, Bowie's Kabbalistic references, even hip-hop and pop play with Illuminati motifs.
Art and fashion constantly borrow occult symbols. Pentagrams, the Eye of Providence, astrological signs, tarot imagery, especially in alternative scenes, but even high fashion plays with occult chic. Think of the evil eye or hamsa becoming common jewelry. Surrealism drew on alchemy.
And gaming. From the old Dungeons and Dragons controversies to modern games like Persona using tarot and Jungian ideas, we even see things like witch talk online, blending aesthetics with DIY practices.
And sometimes pop culture feeds back into actual practice. People discover ideas through fiction and then seek out the real traditions. There's even pop culture magic, using fictional characters as symbolic figures.
But this media portrayal also shapes public perception, doesn't it? Often reinforcing those negative stereotypes.
Absolutely. The idea that occult equals evil. Things like the Satanic Panic in the 80s were fueled by misunderstanding and media hype. Conspiracy theories often latch onto occult symbols.
Although some aspects have become quite normalized, like horoscopes or yoga, which have esoteric roots.
True. It's important for anyone interested to distinguish the often dramatic fiction from the actual traditions, which might be less flashy, but are usually much richer and more complex.
It makes you realize how pervasive these symbols are once you start looking. Which brings us to those common misconceptions. We touched on the big one.
The occult is satanic or evil by default. Just fundamentally untrue. As we said, occult just means hidden knowledge. The paths are incredibly diverse.
A lot of Western occultism historically worked within a Christian framework or alongside it. Ceremonial magic often invokes divine or angelic names. Wicca has no place for the Christian devil.
Exactly. Actual satanic occultism is a small minority within the broader occult world. Ethics vary greatly between traditions, but equating the whole field with devil worship is just wrong.
Okay, what's another one? Occultists are part of a secret conspiracy to control the world.
Ah, the Illuminati trope. Conspiracy theories love this stuff, often with nasty anti-Semitic roots, unfortunately. Real occult orders are typically small social or study groups, not shadowy global manipulators.
Right. How about occult rituals involve orgies and human or animal sacrifice?
Pure sensationalism, largely from fiction and rumor. While some traditions might incorporate symbolic sexual elements consensually, group sex isn't a general feature of occultism, and modern occultists overwhelmingly condemn non-consensual acts or unnecessary harm. Animal sacrifice is extremely rare and rejected by most paths today, including modern Satanism.
Good to clarify. Then there's the opposite extreme. The occult is all nonsense, fake, or delusion.
Dismissing the entire vast heritage out of hand seems, well, uncurious. Many practitioners see these things working on psychological, spiritual, or symbolic levels.
The Jungian perspective shows the real psychological effects. Many fields, like alchemy or astrology, were proto-sciences exploring real phenomena, even if their theories were later superseded.
Exactly. The survival of practices like astrology suggests they speak to something in human experience. It's wise to be discerning, apply critical thinking, but not write off millennia of human exploration.
One more. You have to join a secret society or be initiated to learn the occult.
Historically, that was often true for certain teachings. But today, information is widely available in books, online. Joining a group can offer guidance, but solitary practice is very common and can be just as valid. Real initiation is arguably more about inner commitment than outer ceremony.
So the advice is approach with open-mindedness, but also critical thinking. Don't demonize, don't overly romanticize.
Perfectly put. Practitioners are diverse. The occult itself is a neutral field of knowledge and practice. How it's used depends on the individual, and always try to distinguish metaphor from literal claims.
We've covered so many terms today. Alchemy, archetype, as above, so below, astral plane, gnosis, hermeticism, Kabbalah, magic, tarot, Thelema, true will. The list goes on.
It does. For anyone wanting to get started, maybe a good approach is finding a solid historical overview first. Understand the context.
Good idea. Then maybe pick one area that really resonates, say, tarot or hermeticism, and find a good introductory book on that specific topic.
Then perhaps explore some practical guides, if practice interests you. Read key source texts if you can, like Agrippa or Levy or Jung, for the psychological angle.
Keeping a journal seems like a common recommendation, too. Tracking thoughts, experiences, symbolic resonances.
Yes, and perhaps finding a community, online or local, for discussion, but always maintaining discernment. It's a path that requires patience, openness, balancing intuition with critical thought.
There's that old alchemical saying, isn't there? Ora, relege, labora et inveni.
Pray, read, write again. Work and discover. It emphasizes study, persistent effort, and ultimately, personal discovery.
A fitting thought. So, as we wrap up this initial deep dive into the hidden world of the occult, we hope it's maybe sparked some curiosity, offered a clearer map.
What seemed shrouded reveals itself as this incredibly rich tapestry of human-seeking symbolic language, this enduring quest to understand the mysteries.
And the journey into it is ultimately really personal, isn't it? It invites you to explore connections between the cosmos and your own inner world.
Whether you're drawn to alchemy's symbols, astrology's patterns, tarot's images, or the philosophies of Hermeticism or Gnosticism, there's a vast landscape there.
Remember, it's not just about hidden knowledge out there, but maybe uncovering hidden insights within ourselves.
Engaging with these traditions, intellectually or practically, can offer new ways to think about consciousness, myth, psychology, the very symbols that shape how we see reality.
So we encourage you to keep exploring what resonated today. The path of learning is always ongoing.
The most profound discoveries are often the ones we make ourselves.
Thank you for joining us on WhoAreWe. If this deep dive has maybe illuminated a few hidden corners for you, please do consider liking and subscribing for more explorations into consciousness and the human experience.
Until next time, may your own quest for knowledge be fruitful. Maybe consider, if as above, so below holds truth, what patterns in your own life might reflect larger cosmic cycles or archetypes? Something to ponder.